You cannot say, I'm not anti-sex, but pornography should be banned, just as you cannot say, I'm not racist, but I hate Mexicans. If you are against any form of consensual sexual activity, then you are anti-sex, period. Hey guys, James here, how are you doing? So, it was only a matter of time before the Young Turk said something dumb enough for me to have to respond. So, let's see what they have to say this time.
You may remember last year Plan B passed in LA. If you're not familiar with it, that's the measure that made it so that you had to use condoms in pornography. And we predicted, and many people predicted at the time, that this might drive pornography out of LA, where it's traditionally been very popular to film.
Saying we predicted isn't 100% accurate now, is it? Some of you said, yes, absolutely, it's going to drive porn out. Some of you didn't, for example.
I voted no. I think this measure was just for the sole purpose of getting porn out of LA County.
Oh, come on.
No,
LA
it has
County
nothing to
makes
do
so
with
much
health.
money
Listen, this
off
is the
of
reason
porn.
why we have unions. If the porn actors were so concerned about getting STDs, they could unionize and they could establish this sort of protection for themselves in their own way. There's no reason for outside forces to come in and regulate an industry that they have no interest in.
So, Kamani's been ranting about this all day.
I know,
it's like,
and his rants don't make any sense. Like, not to throw him under the bus.
First of all, you've been outvoted, but
I'm
all right,
sorry.
go ahead.
No, I am outvoted. And look, I fully admit that this initiative had many flaws. I'm not sure that I voted in the correct way, but his logic is a little flawed, right? Because Los Angeles doesn't want to get rid of the porn companies. Believe me, okay?
But then they've got a funny way of showing it.
Kamani was on the right track there, but the truth is even more insidious than that. Michael Weinstein, the man behind the Measure B initiative, basically wants to turn porn films into giant condom commercials and has been trying to do this since 2009. He runs the AIDS Healthcare Foundation, which runs prevention techniques such as condoms, which I have absolutely no problem with at all, and I think they should be encouraged. But the AHF is entirely self-serving, even at the expense of other methods to prevent or cure AIDS, and his foundation has a terrible reputation in the AIDS activist community. The adult entertainment industry already had its own healthcare foundation. They had the Adult Industry Medical Healthcare Foundation, which Weinstein forced to shut down with a bunch of frivolous lawsuits. He's also sued the makers of Viagra after they wouldn't fund him, and even asked the government to cease funding on cures for AIDS and vaccinations, and instead focus on prevention techniques, such as the services which he provides.
And so it's been, 6 months or so, give or take. Let's find out if our predictions were accurate. So we have some stats about the number of requests for pornographic movie shoots. Now, in a typical year, you would expect at this point for there to be over about 500 or so. So far in 2013, 2. Only 2. So it seems like we might have been right. All it took was a little bit of, plastic, rubber, whatever they're made out of, latex, and it drove the entire business out, possibly to Vegas or something.
Yeah.
Even if Measure B was only about condoms, I would still be standing against it anyway, and I'll get to more on that later in this video. However, Measure B also stipulated permits, which are limited and expensive, compulsory completion of bloodborne pathogen training courses, and submission of an exposure control plan. It also stipulates standard of conduct on set whilst filming, and it doesn't stipulate any exceptions for amateurs or couples who don't use condoms in their personal life, and imposes fines and criminal charges against anybody who violates it, which could possibly include putting everybody involved in the production on the sex offenders registry. Now, this will make production nearly impossible for small companies and amateurs, and will create monopolies by driving down competition or create a black market, which wouldn't be good for anyone involved, especially the performers, and wouldn't be good for their health. The industry already has regular testing, and the whole industry ceases filming whenever there's a scare. Despite the propaganda from the AHF, not one performer has caught HIV onset since 2004.
I mean, look, apparently the demand was for non-condom videos in porn.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right? And so when California said you have to use a condom, well, apparently they were like, no, we don't. We have to leave the state. And, it's interesting because, liberals are accused of wanting to be big government, always in favor of regulation, etc. And, I maintain on this show all the time, not because I'm against liberals. I always say, I'm not, in a lot of ways...
Some of my best friends are liberals.
Right, no, in some ways I'm not good enough to be a liberal. I'm not that kind. I'm not that giving in a lot of ways, right? But this is a little different situation. I've always thought, well, would I want too much, a lot of regulation or a little regulation? Well, it depends. Yeah. It depends on what the situation is. And in this case, I thought this was over-regulation. And then, because
you did think it was over-regulation?
I did. And so, but in this case, making porn is fairly easy.
This has nothing to do with being kind or giving. It is pure profiteering. The people who supported this mostly did so with good intentions, I'm sure, but I find it pretty disgusting that they think they deserve the right to tell adults what they can and can't do with their own bodies in the name of protecting them. The only way there could be less HIV in porn at the moment would be if people got magically cured while they are performing. It's because of bullshit like this that I can't call myself a liberal anymore. There were already big producers which gave performers the options to use condoms anyway, such as Vivid, which had won 31 AVN awards, so yeah, that's a pretty huge company. And as Kink said, it's pretty easy to produce porn. If performers really didn't think there were enough producers giving them the option to wear condoms, they could have rallied together, bought a couple of cameras, some studio lighting, hired a few workers and started their own company where they either gave people the option to wear condoms or it was compulsory. As for the woman who just started talking, I've got a lot to say about her views, and needless to say, she's so far to the left she may as well be getting fucked up the arse by the resurrected corpse of Karl Marx. Provided he wore a condom, of course.
You don't need huge
But wait a minute,
sex.
the real statistic should be how many people are having safer sex now. Has it actually influenced the people who watch this?
In those two movies. Okay.
I don't watch porn. I'm not able to say, but I think that the question of the law is whether it was going to be an effective way to encourage people to have safer sex.
The adult entertainment industry has absolutely zero obligation to teach people about safe sex. It's entertainment. Just as Hollywood has zero obligation to teach people about correctly handling firearms or how to drive safely. Telling porn performers that they must wear condoms is as ridiculous as telling stuntmen that they should have to wear crash helmets. Now, if they want to do it off their own back, if they want to put money into sex ed courses, or if they want to voluntarily use condoms in their movies, that's absolutely fantastic. And one of the most outspoken critics of Measure B, James Deen, who's a performer who's performed in dozens of movies, he produced a public service announcement about the use of condoms himself, and I'll play a clip from that here.
I think our point at that time was that it was not going to be effective, hence we were wasting our time with it, because all it was going to do was drive the business to another state where they would still have condomless sex, and you weren't going to accomplish your objective anyway.
And those two videos, by the way?
What the fuck do you mean you disagree? they've dropped from 500 films to 2 films, and these companies haven't shut down, they've simply gone out of the county. This isn't a matter of opinion, you're disagreeing with something which has been objectively shown to you to be true.
Hey, not very sexy.
No. Oh, you've checked them out
watched
already?
both of them?
I didn't feel nothing the whole
Sort
time.
of interesting, because you also directed and starred in them. It's interesting.
Yeah, well, that's how I found out about the story. But interesting note, just for the future. So this was an LA measure, and people fled out of LA to do these in other parts of California. But right now, Assembly Bill 332 is being considered, which would make this same law across all of California.
I think it's great. I think it should be across the country, if not.
So tell me why.
Because look, if it's sort of similar to the soda ban and things like this.
See, that's where I'm not a liberal then. After
I don't think it has anything to do with being a liberal.
You're a big government regulator.
I am a big government regulator, but I'm also an emotional eater, so I'm happy for anyone to put any limits on what I'm going to stuff in my face.
I've heard people here in England argue that the existence of universal healthcare funded by tax gives people the right to legislate what other people can and can't do with their own bodies. But this is the first time I've heard someone argue from such an entirely selfish point of view. The fact that she can't control herself doesn't mean that other people should have their freedoms taken away from them. This self-centered attitude of hers continues later in the video.
But I would say that, look, if it helps people be safer in terms of what they do, if they look up to porn stars or they see these men as alpha males and the women too.
They see the women as alpha males?
If they look at it as a healthy part of sex and a hot, sensual part of sex to use condoms, then I'm all for it.
I'd really like to know if anybody watching this video thinks that condoms are hot and sensual. I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong, I think that condom use should be encouraged, but I don't think that they're hot and sensual any more than I think wearing a seatbelt is cool or edgy.
Yeah, okay, I was the one that was on the other side of this. They haven't brought that up yet. I was expecting them to. I was the one who said this is a good measure when it happened, and they said it's going to run the porn business out of LA. And I was like, who gives a shit? Because except for you're in the porn business, maybe you work and you live here and you want to make sure you're close to, you have a short commute.
So it's not actually reducing the number of films where people don't use condoms because they're going out of state. All it's doing is fucking over the people who are already in the industry and costing the taxpayer $300,000 per year. So tell me, what good is this actually doing?
But the bottom line being, okay, I mean, it's not, and I don't even think it's a point of looking up to porn stars. This is actually, the soda ban was okay, we're going to pay more because more people are fat and obese in healthcare industry. But the problem here is, this is actually spreading disease. So you have sex with someone, more disease is spread when there's less condom usage. Get out of the state. I mean, get out of the city then. Let's have less diseases floating around amongst the citizens.
So as I've said before, there have been 0 cases where people have caught HIV on set since 2004, and they already have regular testing and halt production whenever an STD is found. So yeah, it's not actually going to be doing anything with this condom rule, especially since, as you said, they're just going to be going out of state.
Is rising among gays in major metropolitan cities. I mean, it's a real issue, and I don't mean just for gay people that it's a major issue. But what I was saying is that even with all the education we had for a long time, that went out of fashion because people didn't think we needed it anymore.
Then pump some money into sex education.
I don't understand why we need to rally behind an industry that debases women, and I can't imagine that it's a positive experience for most of the people who work in it.
I think by this point in the video, we all knew a comment like that was on its way. So, Katie, you may find porn to be degrading, so don't watch porn and don't do porn. Nobody is forcing you to. You're perfectly free to decide not to do it, and if anybody forces you to do it, then that is a crime. I personally would find it really degrading to be fucked up the arse by another man. But I don't go sticking my nose into the 10% of the male population's business which likes to do that thing and tell them not to do it because of my personal preferences, and I especially, since I'm not interested in it, wouldn't be telling them how to do it. Now, It seems that Katie views this thing as, women are these fragile, weak little creatures who will cry at even the thought of looking at a penis, and men are like these laser-focused rape machines. It's completely absurd. So yeah, contrary to popular belief, most women really enjoy sex, and the women in the porn industry are generally there because they enjoy doing it. The people that, the producers which are actually abusive, people like Max Hardcore, really are few and far between, and you get that in absolutely every industry. Even if it was degrading, there's lots of jobs which are really degrading, but people still deserve the choice to be able to do that of their own free will if they're not coerced into doing it. Yeah, it's like you never hear people saying about how porn being degrading to men. There's certainly lots of porn which, using Katie's criteria, could be viewed in that way. We seem to be able to view men as being adults, but when it comes to women, they're weak little children who need protecting. It's utterly pathetic. Oh, and if there was something which would make porn a horrible place to work, it would be measures like this, which would either result in, creating monopolies where, they've either got arsehole A or arsehole B to work for, and there's no pressure for the local industry to make it a pleasant place for them to work because they've got very little choice, or it would end up just driving it underground where it is actually illegal, and if they are being abused they can't seek help. It's measures like this which, if anything, will create problems.
Freedom, baby. Okay, so look, I disagree with you. I understand how you perceive it as debasing women in some instances. I get that.
In some instances?
I mean, there's
how many dicks in your face does it take?
Women.
I would love to see you try and say that to a porn star's face. I really would. Now, again, the fact that you find it degrading has absolutely zero bearing on how other people should see it. There's sites like RedTube, Pornhub, FetLife, Tumblr, and Adult Friend Finder, to name just a few, and combined there are millions of women every single day who completely, out of their own free will, post up naked photos of themselves, or with a toy, or with some guys, or with some girls, and videos, and they do that completely of their own free will. They're not even being paid. They're doing it purely because they enjoy doing it, and they like the fact that other people are going to see them naked, and that should be completely 100% up to them. You're coming off just as bigoted as the right-wing homophobes, who I'm sure you absolutely detest, who think that the fact that they find the idea of anal sex disgusting, that they should then be able to impose that view on the rest of society.
Yeah, it's just class. There's just a story. Turns out that it was, that they were neighbors.
And I'm very pro erotica. I want to put that out there, that I'm pro erotica, and I would, if all of these things worked the way that it does in the Netherlands, that people got health care and they were treated fairly and all of those things, I would probably be pro porn too in that circumstance.
So
the difference between porn and erotica is completely subjective. A video which you'd look at and think is really hot erotica, other people who are more extreme may look at and just be like, well, that's clearly just the most abhorrent kind of abuse and it should just be completely and outright banned. It's completely subjective, and people should be able to do whatever they want with their own body as long as it's consensual. So yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. Check out the links in the description box. Check out my last video on Measure B because I go into a lot more detail about it. So thanks for watching. Comment, rate, subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Bye.